never seen anything like that. I mean, I've seen jiu-jitsu, but those guys are amazing.
A great honor to have the Machado brothers.
Machado.
It's Carlos Machado.
This episode is sponsored by Stay Humble Coffee. Coffee is so good, it doesn't need to brag. Find it at stayhumblecoffee.com. All right, everyone. Another episode of Coffee Time with Carlos Machado. I have a dear friend, somebody I respect, an amazing figure in our community, in particular the law enforcement, Sheriff Bill Waybourn. And it has been a while since I wanted him to come here to the podcast. In recent times, I saw him at the eulogy of our beloved, rest in peace, Carlos Norris, more known as Chuck Norris. He was brought to me by a dear friend, Mr. Bill Chatfield, and we've been in connection and talking to each other for the longest time. I've been in Tarrant County in many occasions to work out with the defensive tactics instructors out there on implementing jiu-jitsu approach to their law enforcement training. And it has been an amazing pleasure and honor, sir, to have you here and to get to know you. And welcome to the podcast.
Well, it is my honor and privilege to be here with such a great champion of the martial arts.
Thank you, sir.
And the things that you've done and your reputation I knew about long before I got to ever meet you. And I was very excited about just meeting you and being in your presence. And at the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office Academy, we teach the Carlos Machado way for our defensive tactics, and we're very excited about that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So what I wanted to talk to you about, and I mentioned that briefly right before we started, I like to do the reverse engineering, starting from the here now and then kind of go backwards, because you have such an extensive career serving our country, first in the military, then in law enforcement, then becoming a sheriff, successfully being elected 2 terms in a row. And hopefully, we have more to come, doing an amazing job. I know how much of a challenge it is to, juggle everything and deal with all the pressures of your position. So let's start with it now. Where is Sheriff Bill Waybourn today, and what is the thing that takes most of your time and focus?
Well, we've got a large organization, and people probably take most of my time, internally people. Now, we deal with some folks on the outside, because often what people do is they'll take a piece of gossip and they'll run with it and they'll blow it out of proportion. And the next thing we know, we have media inquiries and we've got to stop and say, no, that's not true. Here's the deal. So those things go on all the time, every day, chasing rabbits, if you will. And but at the same time, we've got an incredible, great staff that we're looking forward to head. Like here in another month or so, we're opening a brand new law enforcement academy, the Tarrant County Sheriff's Academy, which we certainly want you there and to honor you. I think it's going to be a big deal. It's tens of thousands of square foot, including a great defensive tactics room. And so that is the focus at the moment. That is one of them. The second one is we have the World Cup coming here.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
And it's going to be like 9 Super Bowls. So there's a lot of training and a lot of planning going into that. And then we have the run-of-the-mill business of arresting bad guys and keeping them in jail. So all of that's going on simultaneously.
Well, you mentioned the World Cup, like 9 Super Bowls at once. When you talk about security and infrastructure, what does that entail? Do you have to outsource work? You have to hire more people? I'm sure the hours are going to be crazy for the current officers.
They will. Well, I cannot get into methodology and specifics of some of that. I can tell you and tell the world that it's going to be a safe place to be. Everybody is on their front feet and leaning forward. And we're working all angles. And one of the angles that we're working, I think, is very important to this type of gathering, because we're expecting 3.5 million people, is human trafficking. And we will be out in force in regards to human trafficking, because we know that will come in from all across the country and all across the world, matter of fact.
Wow. Yeah. Since you touched on that subject, and I know how engaged you are in assisting the victims and combating such a terrible crime, I'd like if possible, that you give us a little bit of a breakdown, because I know this is a topic that has been, I remember the movie The Sound of Silence.
Absolutely.
So we have a lot of times the public hear about it. I think you hear more about it, but still, what progress has been taking place? I know we had recently, based upon an interview that I heard from you, and I was doing my research. Some of the biggest things happen here in your jurisdiction, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken. So, what's the state of affairs in that regard?
Well, thank you for your interest in that. When I came into office in 2017, that was one of the first things we did. We said, who's working human trafficking? And the answer was basically nobody. Even some of the major organizations had maybe one person that was monitoring things from the jail, but nobody was taking that proactive work. So our team put together a group, and we also enlisted some help from the outside, some 501Cs. And we leaned forward on that. To date, we have probably rescued almost 1,500 people.
Mm.
We have put at least that many in jail, including many traffickers, and sent them several people to jail for life because of that. But I think that it's happening everywhere, but a lot of people ignore it and don't realize it's happening right under their nose. And that was what was going on here. It was happening right under our nose. And a lot of these people that we're rescuing, they're not from exotic countries somewhere around the world. They're our people. They're our people right here. We'll occasionally run into folks from foreign countries, but most of the times these people are right here. And what you're seeing is the forgotten children, as I refer to them. And these are children that are bad homes or no homes, or even some bad foster situations. And they're 13 or 14 years old when this begins. And they're trapped. And unfortunately, it becomes normal to them to be treated that way. But we have been able to get those kids out of there and had very good success at turning them over to 501Cs, who gets them started on a new life and a new place. It's been an incredible blessing and something else to watch.
It's kind of like one of those things when you come across the problem and you hear the victims' stories and stuff like that. I've seen also the fatherless homes, and how sometimes kids don't have a father figure. So the odds of them sometimes leaving home early, especially if their family is from like a low income,
That's right.
environment, and they become some of the candidates for that kind of exploitation. You also talked about, and I was just recalling, I heard you on my research of you about when there are drugs, there's always a high potential of also human trafficking. And you said with the fentanyl crisis,
That's right.
and everything else, it kind of, the scale goes to another level, because sometimes you're going to have the same victim performing more than one thing and being taken advantage of by those who manipulate them for their greed and exploitation.
That is a great size up. That's exactly what is going on. And our kids coming out of fatherless homes, these incredibly at-risk children, they're going to look for a sense of safety of someplace, and that's what the trafficker first does, is give them safety, and then they use drugs to keep them. And
it's like an indenture.
Yes, exactly. And we've been, we did have the largest arrest in America, where we made 115 arrests in like a 3-day operation a couple of years ago. And but we're doing that all over. It's being duplicated all over the country. So there in America's not putting up with it. But if I may, a little off base, but I will tell you a person who and I know, and we loved him, that saved a lot of those at-risk kids. And that was Carlos Norris with his Kickstart program, where they rescued right at 100,000 at-risk children that they got in that program. And it was martial arts that saved those kids, that taught them the discipline and taught them that somebody else cared, taught them that they didn't have to go down those easy paths.
I think it's no accident that Carlos and Gina became so engaged and motivated with that particular project that I remember when he started originally. It used to be called Kick Drugs Out of America initially, and then eventually Kick Start, and I think having a purpose in life, and I think martial arts, at least it gives you that sense of discipline. I have a purpose. I want to grow. I want to become a black belt. I want to become a competent student. Who knows, maybe become an instructor. And I think those kids and that whole concept is revolutionizing because it started in the inner cities, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
So those people, those kids at risk had a channel to. So is there a particular, besides Chuck Norris's organization, Kickstart, on out of the 501Cs that you mentioned about, that you talk about, that has a name and has done a similar approach in, because I see the recovery part a lot of times is the hard part too. You have a victim that has been rescued. So now what? How can you reintegrate them and
That's right.
cope with the trauma that they bring upon?
It is amazing. And our biggest partner right now is a group called Unbound. And they take these people in and they try to get them security. They get them home life. They'll plug them into a church. They will start teaching them a trade and those kind of things. And as you find out in dealing with people with trauma, this is all people of trauma as a general rule, but mostly in this type of situation, is you will find that these mostly young women, there are young men, but you'll find that their chronological age is not what their age is. They might be 21, but they say, well, this person's acting more like a 14-year-old. And what we've done is we've tied, that's when it started. They didn't advance in maturity. Mm. And so we have a couple of organizations, and Unbound is one of them. And there's another group, especially from women that have had tremendous success, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, and they're out in Denton County, is taking these women, for instance, the 21-year-old women, and going through a couple of years of therapy and raising them to their chronological age. It's amazing.
Yeah, that part, because I know when Jenna Quinn was here, one of the things that struck me was, first of all, she became from victim to victor, and there were two components right there. The therapy definitely, and she was able to heal to a great degree through whatever protocols she had, but also her faith. So there was the spiritual component. And I feel that, not trying to dispute here whatever preferences people have, I think when you don't believe in anything, you're susceptible to believe in everything. Amen. And I think you become a lot more at risk of being manipulated by those who want to take advantage of you.
Right.
Okay, so we have, it's not uncommon that you talk about, for instance, the World Cup, Super Bowl, and everything. And it's ironic because it's a festivity, it's a celebration, it's an event that's the most watched event whenever it happens. And then you have that dark side, right. But how does that play out? That's the part I'm curious. Do they bring victims to selected parties or per request of different people? What is the process?
There are several variables in that, but they can come from far as traffickers bringing people from all over the country to these places, and they do exactly that. They'll be soliciting people during parties. They will set up websites that you can go visit. You can try to get an escort here or there. So there's several methodologies that they do use. And we're going to try our best to as the old Texas Ranger said, cut them off at the pass.
Wow.
And take them in.
From your experience, though, in this particular regard, I think with forensics and the advancement of technology, I think the reach of law enforcement and the capability has definitely been increased.
Oh yes.
And I understand that we cannot discuss things that potentially shouldn't be revealed to the public at large. But how do you see the use of technology nowadays to serve, to protect, or even prevent things like that from happening?
Well, what we do is we have a full-time intel team and they are using technology every day to stop crime, stop bad things from happening all over the country. And my team at Tarrant County, I'm extremely proud of them. Just 3 weeks ago, stopped a swatting incident in Miami, then again in Texas, and they were able to put a stop to it and able to warn people ahead of time. But they have also done things where they've interrupted using our partners like the FBI. Just a couple of years ago, we interrupted a shipment of money going to Hamas. So it comes full circle of everything that we're doing.
Well, things expand. So you have the technology, and it's kind of like the effect of it is it serves multiple purposes. It could be protecting people from trafficking, or it could be preventing terrorism organizations from getting funds.
Absolutely. Wow. And they've interrupted active shooters and stopped them before they started. But you're right. It's amazing, as you well said a while ago, is that drugs are always there in these outfits. But at the water and trough of human trafficking, all kinds of organized crime shows up. All kinds. And so we are ready for all of it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I think too, the component, like you said, of the drugs. I remember a while back, this was a few years back, after I was already established in Texas. It has been over 3 decades since I came here.
Wow.
And I remember Plano at that time. This was before the fentanyl era, but they were having an issue with heroin, and it was the highest rate of deaths amongst youngsters by heroin consumption. And it was Plano, Texas,
right,
in Collin County. And I was like, whoa. And then I remember you mentioned, nowadays, more recently, fentanyl has become the issue, the drug in itself, and how they actually lace other drugs with it.
That's right.
So if a kid now is doing vaping or is using weed or something like that, they might be susceptible.
Absolutely.
So how do you see that, and what kind of how big or how bad that is at this point in time in Texas in particular?
Well, is all of what you said was true. We had marijuana that was sprayed down with fentanyl, and the whole idea is to get you trapped in that where you're in addiction and you need it tomorrow. We've actually have an incredible governor that is a law enforcement governor, and with the president. And of course, when he came into office, we've seen fentanyl take a deep dive. We've seen overdoses take a deep dive. And I think that's very exciting. We'll never, ever completely stop it, but it has been slowed down. And again, my narcotics team has been involved in some huge takedowns. We had one of our canine just a couple of months ago have a takedown where they seized 150,000 M30 fentanyl pills, and 6 out of 10 of those pills were fatal in one traffic stop. And it was all cartel. It was all coming from Mexico. And they looped around and found a hole in the border, and here they come. And so today, while we're still alert, we're still watchful, but we think it's slowing down just a little bit.
So moving into another part here, you said your position, the challenges, the work and the challenges are people. Right. You're in charge of quite a few. Tarrant County is one of the largest departments in the world. And how much of a pressure do you have from outside? Because you have like all the biases, all the politics. It is a political job.
It is.
As well.
As we saw in, we see rather, I refer to them quite jokingly a little bit as my fan club, but there are people that show up all the time to Commissioner's Court to complain about me and complain about the jail and complain about something that we done. And these people are categorically just anti-law enforcement, and I recognize they're not anywhere near the majority of people what they think about it. But it is constant pressure. I've got some incredible people that work around me. Our jail staff and jail chiefs, they're incredible. Our medical staff is on their game, along with the MHMR, which is huge these days. But I've got great people running these shows, and I've been really blessed in that. And they're doing a great job, and the credit really goes to them, because most of the time I just need to get out of the way, and they're doing fine.
How do you see the media in regards to whatever extent could be based upon your experience or your observations? Because I know in different places there's definitely a bias,
Mm-hmm.
not often in favor, but always, like you say, against law enforcement. But at the same time, those people that complain about it are the first ones to call them when
Right.
they need it.
Absolutely. And here in North Texas, I'll divide them up. The television media, for the most part, does a pretty good job. They do a good job. I'll say a good job. And they report the facts and all that. And that's all I can ask for, right? Is just report the facts and be fair. And then we have some other media that are off the chart, biased. They're not going to print a favorable story about the sheriff's office, and haven't. I tease that I said if there was a drowning and I walked on water and got the guy out of the water and walked back to shore and saved him, headlines would read, Waybourn can't swim. They're that biased. But it is that way. And I tell people, you see something in the media, vet it out, look for other sources that concur with it, because what they are champions of is taking something out of context and not putting the context around it. Because we all say things, and they just take a piece of that and run with it. It makes us look awful.
Has this been the case since you started as a sheriff, or has become worse in recent times?
It did start shortly after I became sheriff, and it has gotten horrifically worse, in my opinion.
Yeah. So in that regard, I guess, you have a task ahead of you. You have it's not an easy job. Like you said, there's plenty to do, and you're in charge of a lot of people and responsibilities. How do you deal with this? When there's this negative public, because I don't think it's public opinion. It's just manufacturing of public opinion. They are trying to incite a perspective, and I'm not here taking sides.
Right.
I understand that not always the case that somebody cannot make a mistake, whether you are a law enforcement officer or not. But like you said, stick to the facts and don't change things out of context. But from your day to day, because I remember I saw you one time in one of my visits to your department prior to one of the trainings that I had there. And you're dealing with a lot of media, the jail, some inmates that had some issues and so on. And that you had to deal with the whole ordeal and stuff. How do you cope with that? And how do you keep your cool when things like that happen?
And by the grace of God goeth I. But what I will tell you is that my faith is important, and a lot of prayer, and then I know that I do some physical workout. I still kick and punch a little bit.
That's great.
And I try to get in some cardio and weightlifting. I think that physical part is real important, but also very much the spiritual part. And I think about a guy by the name of Jesus that wasn't real popular at the end of his life, and some of the people of the Bible that I admire, had really, really tough times. I think I think about Joseph in Genesis being thrown in jail just before he takes control of Egypt. But so these trials are learning parts. I think that it's iron sharpening iron. And I try to look for the blessing in it. And I try to look and see where we're going in it. And sometimes I feel sorry for the people that are saying it because they're just so misinformed.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. And it's going to be either a rude awakening for them, or a lot of times if they are doing things that sometimes knowingly they know they're not saying as it is or the truth, I think they're going to pay a price. I don't see people being happy, acting that way. You talked about how you take care of yourself. I think that struck me here a little bit. You're still active. You do some of your martial arts, even if it's punch in the bag. You do your workout. Let's talk about that a little bit, because one of the things I see, and I'm not trying to sound critical, I think it doesn't matter who you are. I think you have to take care of yourself. You got to take care of yourself. You have to be functional. And I see in some departments when I go visit for training, some officers that are in better or worse shape than others. And I feel that that's something that even in the martial arts, a lot of times in my organization, if we have events and everything else, and I see an instructor who's not taking care of himself and is getting out of shape, that's contradicting what they're about, But I think for law enforcement in particular, you would expect a certain standard just because of the risk in which they're going to have to, at one point in time, become physical, in order to protect the citizens and make order and defend the law. So how do you see that? Because you're an example, to what I feel it should be the case.
It is, and and I don't know about you, but every day I get up and I go, well, I should be doing more, and trying to stay a little bit more healthier. But we try to motivate and try to inspire our deputies and officers to do the same thing. We want them to work out, and right now we've got a full-time trainer embedded with us, who we got there on a grant, that you can have one-on-one time with him for him to set up your nutrition, your weight workout, your cardio workout. All of it's there. And so we've encouraged them to take advantage of that. Now, he'll be wrapping up about September, so we're going to figure out what we do next. We have talked about, now, you might not want to make this public, but I had this conversation just a few days ago that really it would be great to have a quarterly a seminar brought over by this guy by the name of Carlos Machado, and have him do seminars with us and try to figure out how that benefit our troops. So we've got calendar things like that. Individually, I've talked to supervisors that, hey, this is part of the appraisal. And I recognize you're working midnight shift and you're running from call to call, and that gourmet McDonald's is right there, and that's what you eat all the time because you just don't have time to do anything else. And then you wash it down with something nutritional like a Coca-Cola, and it just wears on them. Yeah. But we do try to do that. In all of our facilities now, we have almost a full gym. So the gymnasium is there in our substations, as well as our training academy, and in our headquarters, our jails. It's all there so that they can work out. And we're trying to make things more available to them.
Well, I think through my experience dealing with some of the officers, especially the ones that pass through the academy and they get into the workforce, for the departments, the challenges that they have, because you start with a certain pay, especially when you're in the beginning of your career. Many of them are married, and then they have to do extra hours sometimes on the weekend and stuff. So I feel it's almost like a heroic act for some of them to stay, although I think it's ideal that they stay disciplined with physical activities and watching out for what they eat. People don't realize how hard it is.
Yes.
The performing that job.
It
you know what I'm saying? It's just like, for the average person, they have no perspective on that.
No, they don't. And when they come out and see the lifestyle that these guys have to live, and we always remind them, or I try to remind them, that law enforcement today all over is really a second cousin to our special operators in the military. And I mean that by they got to have a lot of things in their toolbox in order to perform that job, including their physical fitness. And I mean, for instance, the mental health stuff is off the chart these days.
Really?
And when I came in, 25% of the jail had mental health problems. Today, it's at like 65%.
Are you serious?
Yes, and it's mostly drug-induced. Probably 95% of it drug-induced, with THC leading the way. And so as they're having to deal with this person, I tell them all the time, you deal with somebody that has significant mental health issues, and it's like you're driving around Fort Worth with a Denver road map. It's not what you think is right isn't going to necessarily be right. And you got to have techniques, and you've got to have the ability to stay calm, cool, and collective in those deals.
So, I whenever I leave the United States and I go abroad, there are two things. Before I used to say only, God bless America, because I mean it's the best. I'm not trying to sound biased. The best country in the world.
Oh, I agree.
God bless it. Then after I moved to Texas, I say also God bless Texas. No kidding, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But with that said, I know that we have to deal with issues no matter where we live. In terms of crime rates, and I think Tarrant County is a big, jurisdiction right there. What are the prevailing type of crimes that on the map that you would say in terms of, I would say, from the most concerning to the lower ones? What is the things that you see happening?
Well, the three top things that come to mind when it comes to bad crimes is, of course, murder.
Okay.
And then the other one is sexual assault of children. And it's always there. And then the third one is like aggravated assault or aggravated robbery, where somebody's using violence to either gain something or hurt someone. So those are the three prevailing things in my mind. The good news is crime is down. Last year was the lowest crime rate in the United States since 1900. And while there are things that happen are kind of one-offs that we're dealing with, on the violent side is that what is coming to this, again, coming back to this mental health issue, is most, not all, but most police shootings that we are involved with across the country, not only in Tarrant County, but across the country, officer-involved shootings, is over the person has a mental health issue. And they're schizophrenic. The officer, they're not bad performance by the police officer. It's just that you've got somebody with significant mental health and they're threatening somebody and there's just not a lot of choice left. But I tell them, spoke to a group of new people yesterday. I said, our frontier is this mental health issue. We're going to have to become better practitioners for mental health.
Yeah. Well, I know I spoke with our great Senator Ted Parker not long ago about the findings of Abogaine, in which President Trump already did an executive order. I know Joe Rogan was there as one of the proponents, and the initial findings of the research have been quite encouraging. They're trying to recover veterans from PTSD, but I think there's a vast, application overall. It's yet to be seen how it can serve the public at large, but I think there's movement towards that direction.
How exciting is that? And I know Texas is leading the way, and Ted Parker was crucial in that. And of course, former Governor Perry is way involved in that. But I think about those things, and Abogaine, that I've talked to. He was stated at public, Marcus Luttrell, who was abusing drugs and drinking prescription drugs, and drinking and dipping snuff. Now, Abogaine treatment, and he'd been doing that for years, since 2005. And one Abogaine treatment, he got up the next morning and didn't want any of it. I mean, that's amazing. That's miraculous. And 80% of the people I've got in jail today are there because of the abuse of a controlled substance. We might have an impact You know,
Who knows?
who knows?
Yeah. Well, that's definitely encouraging. So, um, you're talking about, crime has been at its lowest. I think too, when you compare Texas to other states, we have gun rights over here. And do you see that also as an impact on the way crime rates happen?
I do. I absolutely do. I was a police chief for a long time before sheriff, and always talked about a great response time of being 2 or 3 minutes, and we'd be there. And then my next statement to the good citizen would be, "Have you fought somebody for 3 minutes?" It's a long
Oh
time.
my gosh, it's an eternity. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. And I said, I believe in individual responsibility, and I was blessed to be a part of a movement in the '90s when George Bush was governor, and I was not a very popular police chief among my peers. When I went down and argued that I thought that we ought to have a handgun license and people ought to be able to carry handguns.
Mm.
And then once again with my friend, the Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, we argued a couple of years ago for constitutional carry.
Mm.
And I think that bad guys hesitate if they think that the good citizen could be armed. And we've seen several of them where they have been armed and it went bad for the bad guy. So I think that is good. And now my Eastern Coast friends that in law enforcement think we're absolutely crazy. They have said to me, said, "Sheriff Waybourn, you mean everybody in Texas carries guns?" I said, "If you stop at the entry points when you come into the state, the welcoming centers, if you don't have a gun, we'll loan you one while you're here."
I made a joke about that. If you live in Texas, you gotta eat steak, get some boots and a buckle, and get a good old gun. Otherwise, they kick you out.
That's right. That's it. That's it.
Okay, so now this intrigues me though. You said that your fellow law enforcement peers from other parts of the country, in which I guess they have more liberal policies and they restrict gun ownership, they thought that it shouldn't be the case to have
Right.
gun rights.
Right. Even police chiefs in Texas at the time it was happening didn't like it. You know, they were against it, and people were fearful that we'd have this, gunfights in the street and old fashioned, just Western craziness. But
Yeah.
none of that happened.
Hmm.
None of it happened. I trust the good citizens of the state of Texas. I think they'll be just fine.
How many of those were able to defend themselves and other people in many instances that I guess is not publicized enough?
It is not publicized enough. I remember in 2 different situations, and I think one of them was in a Houston mall where a bad guy came in and was shooting at a handgun license, and a young man neutralizes him, and shoots him and takes care of him. That happened, I believe, in Houston, and I believe there was another case in Bexar County where a guy was going into a movie theater to shoot it up, and he was stopped before he ever went. And I'm like, you don't see that on national news.
Yeah. But it happens, I guess, more often than we assume.
Absolutely.
One of the things that sometimes I'm mindful of, let's say road rage,
Right.
Because here, like everybody, is this, and I'm kind of going on a tangent here, just because you have the firsthand knowledge from your position. Is that something that happens quite often in Texas, in the fact that everybody can own guns here?
I don't think that is necessarily a factor of people having been able to carry guns, but once is too often. But we have had it happen. There's no question, and I think that goes on across the United States. To be quite honest with you, but in these heavy metropolitan areas where traffic can be very, very frustrating, and somebody does something stupid like that, it does happen from time to time. And whether they're a legal gun owner or not, I don't know what those stats are.
You being in Fort Worth, then you have Dallas, you have Houston, you have San Antonio, you have Austin. How do you see the environment in terms of how things are handled? And I'm not sure if this is something you feel like answering, because sometimes you have more liberal policies here and there, or you have more restrictions here and there. Do you have like a parallel compared? Because I think Tarrant County seems like a good standard, in my opinion. And I don't think it happens by accident. And I'm not trying to flatter you, but I understand your input is critical, the way you run the show out there. How do you perceive other areas like that? That sometimes, because Houston has been on the news sometimes with a lot of things happening out there.
Well, the thing about Tarrant County is law enforcement's traditional law enforcement. If you want crime to go down, there's a secret. You put people in jail, and you prove that they did the crime. You give them due process, and then you send them to prison. And that's exactly what we do. We got a very, very strong district attorney. We got a very strong judicial. They're very conservative. In fact, I think our judicial and DA has more death penalties in the last few years than the rest of those counties that you named combined. And I think that some of the philosophies in some of those counties has been, well, we're not going to prosecute a lot of crimes, what they consider low-level crimes. And, we had the situation where people wasn't getting prosecuted for stealing food. Well, they were going and stealing food, and there was nothing the police could do about it because the DA wasn't going to prosecute it. And we're the third largest county, and I believe that we are the safest in Texas. Dallas is bigger than us, and Harris is bigger than us. But I do believe that we're the model. We had, with all the criticism over the jail, one of the unique things I do that the other major counties don't do is when I do have a death in custody, I do a press release. So that's how these people know about it. And is that the jail, which has been receiving the biggest critics, is people say, oh, it's a death trap and this, that, and the other. Well, last year, I'm the third largest, and I was number 5 in deaths in custody. And they're natural causes and those kind of things. But none of those sheriffs in any of those counties want that. But we do that. But the DOJ, we asked them to come and evaluate us, and they did 2 years ago. And they came back and they in the brief out said, this is a Cadillac model.
Wow. And
they have sent, and I don't want to embarrass any other sheriffs, but they have sent several sheriffs looking for help to my jail to go look how they do things. So I do think we have the model. I think in operations, in our human trafficking team, our narcotics team, I think we set the stage. I think we are best practices.
That's awesome. All right, so let's talk about a bit. I want to know a bit more about young Bill Waybourn. All right. You were in the military, at the Air Force of all places, huh? Like our good old friend, Mr. Norris.
That's right.
Yeah.
Same career field.
Would you mind telling me a bit what motivated you to serve your country in that fashion? Do you have a tradition in the family? What was the culprit?
My father marched with Patton in World War II and was a World War II veteran, and he came home and, of course, was incredibly patriotic, and I wanted to follow him. I was 8 years old when he passed away, unfortunately. So here I am out of high school, and at first I thought I wanted to go to college, but that wasn't a good plan. And so I went down and I looked at all the militaries, and I walked into the Air Force recruiter and says, here I am, I want to be a cop, and I'd like to see the world. And that was in Arlington, Texas. And they said, of course, sign right here. And I got through all that program and then went to San Antonio for all my training and went to the Security Police Academy there and then to the anti-terrorist training, all having a good time. And then we got our orders. And I was excited about what part of the world I was going to see. Well, they sent me to Carswell Air Force Base, Fort Worth, Texas. So I traveled 30 miles at best. But the Air Force was incredible to me. I look back on that experience, and if young people are confused to who they are, what they want to do, go serve. Go serve. And you'll never regret it. And it was very, very good to me. And what the Air Force did was not only reinforce discipline, but it also reinforced leadership. You know, they want good leaders. They're training people up to be good leaders.
This episode is brought to you by Machado Method Nutrition, premium fuel for disciplined athletes who train with intent and recover with purpose. Live the method, fuel the life. Start now at machadomethodnutrition.com. Now, you just stayed in Fort Worth mostly. Did you ever go abroad at all?
I did not while I was active duty. I came back and rejoined the reserves in 91.
Oh,
And I was with a combat skills unit there, and I traveled quite a bit with them
okay.
and deployed once over abroad.
I tell you, you didn't let go that easy, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's awesome. So, what was the tenure like of your military service?
Well, I was at Carswell during my active duty days, and we were a first strike nuclear team. But while I was doing that, I was also involved with the anti-terrorist team where, it was somewhat like a base SWAT team, but also had worldwide mobility. And so we trained with that team, and I enjoyed that, and eventually became what was called the NCO in charge of that team, and for a little while, and really had a good time with them, and never deployed to anywhere outside the bases. We had some issues inside the base from time to time, but it was a great experience on building a team. It was a great experience on leadership, and that's the takeaway from my active duty in Air Force days.
Do you think that experience? I suspect that's a fact. In particular, how well did that serve you when you became involved with law enforcement after?
I believe, looking back on it, it put me a long way ahead of my peers that were in law enforcement. And the Air Force sent me through the police academy, and I was able to start my law enforcement career. And everything that they had taught me about, being patient, don't overreact to a situation, those kind of things, that the first report may not be right. All of those things served me incredibly well.
Wow.
And also that mindset of doing that. And of course, I'd been a martial artist with a guy by the name of Roy Kerbin.
Mm-hmm.
And so that also helped quite a bit.
So it was almost like everything was synchronized.
Absolutely.
To the point where when you made the transition, did you have an idea that you'd become involved with law enforcement after serving in the military? Was that something natural for you?
Yeah, it absolutely was. Is at the time my brother was a police officer. I wanted to follow his footsteps. And so I was excited about, getting into law enforcement. And of course, I went in the Air Force when I was 18. In those days, you couldn't be a cop unless you were in the military, and you had to be 21. So it worked out beautifully. It was the best 4 years of education I ever had.
Wow, incredible. And being law enforcement, I guess you had your tenure as an officer, but then you got into the political part of it, in going for becoming a sheriff.
Right.
Would you elaborate a little bit and tell me what led you to that? And I'm sure maybe your work at the Air Force, the leadership skills that you acquired, maybe have been very instrumental. But being in the political game requires a lot more than just, one thing. So would you like to elaborate, please?
Absolutely. I was blessed to be a police chief for 30 years, and it was in Tarrant County. And what happened in Tarrant County is I was looking at the sheriff's office, and they should be the leader. They should be, we got your six kind of organization, and they weren't that. They weren't doing a lot of law enforcement work. Number one. Number two is they were doing some things backwards from every other county in the state of Texas. And I had conversations with other police chiefs about it, and they concurred with me that the county ought to take a bigger leadership role, and also, take prisoners into jail. In those days, they wouldn't take your prisoner unless you had a case done and accepted by the district attorney. Well, in small cases, you had to hold that prisoner 3 or 4 days at the city, or up to 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe a month, depending on what the offense was. And so that was going on, and we said, that's not right. They should be taking our prisoners. So there was some motivation to run, and that was my motivation, was to, we'll see if we can bring Tarrant County to the forefront and be the leader.
Mm.
And so when you got into politics, it was all about relationships.
Mm.
It can be a very, very difficult world because often people give you lip service. And the other thing that was very difficult for me was you had to fundraise.
Mm.
You had to go out and fundraise, and that was difficult. And in fact, one of my biggest fundraisers was because of our good friend Aaron and Chuck Norris came and did a fundraiser for me,
Mm.
and we did we did that. But I hated that part. Still do. Still have to do it.
Mm.
You have to ask people for money because that's the blood of politics,
Mm.
and but it sure will humble you too. And but also other people helped me out. There's tons of people. I couldn't have done it without all the people in my life. Of course, my wife, who was incredibly supportive. But I mean, our friend Bill Chatfield,
Mm-hmm.
he helped me out. Our friend Roy Kerbin helped me out. We had tons and tons of people like that. And they would introduce me to people. They'd let me give them why I was running, that I wanted to bring us to the forefront. And if they bought into the idea, then they were happily write checks, and and we would go on about our rat killing. But that was the tough part about politics. And of course, there were the people who out and out just didn't think you should be there.
Mm.
But those have diminished, at least in our party. The other side would like to see me gone, but
Mm.
and I also ran on immigration issues,
Mm.
and that was like I said, this is 2016, but I still saw the illegal alien that was committing crime, and like today, I probably have 500 illegal aliens that have committed some sort of serious offense, like murder or like sexual assault of a child. And there's 400 of them in jail representing over 25 different countries that they never should have been here in this country in the first place. So I feel good about some of the accomplishments, but when I was on the campaign trail, it was all about getting that person to believe me that I would do what I said I would do. And, I think people often don't think the politician will do that.
Mm.
But, I have to go back and review the word. What does politician mean? A person that influences. And so that always makes me feel a little bit better. It's not quite as awful that way.
Right, right. And I think too, like you said, a lot of people, they will give you lip service, and you probably learn early on that it's not everybody that you're gonna take at face value. You're gonna have to do your due diligence. But I think that networking is something that you gotta do. What you gotta do. If am I wrong to say that your opponent on your first election was somebody who was better funded than you at a point in time, or what was the case?
No, I think I surpassed him in fundraising.
Okay,
I think I surpassed him in fundraising, but that was in part because of Carlos and Aaron and doing a fundraiser for me. And that was an incredible night. We had a lot of good people there, a lot of ball players.
That's
and,
great.
And
What was your greatest challenge as you became
the sheriff?
sheriff? Yeah.
I think the greatest challenge that once I got into the office internally was learning the jail culture. And what you realize very quickly is like today I have 4,300 inmates. It's a small city. I have 300 medical people in the facility and 100 MHMR people in the facility. Is learning that culture of what correction officers are doing. And it's incredible. It's incredible what they do there because they themselves are in jail for hours and hours. So probably I thought I knew what the jail culture was. I did not know. And so getting in and learning that was good. And I think the most frustrated part is the commissioner's court has slowly taken power away from other elected officials over the years. So, when I was trying to do things, for instance, our SWAT weapons had failed when I came in it was already happening. The guns that they were using at the time were failing on them. So we needed new SWAT guns. You need those guns to work. And even though I found the money and everything else to do what I needed to do with, and I told the county this was an emergency and I needed purchasing and I needed auditing and I needed administration to line up and let's get this done. An emergency like that, it still took 8 months.
Really?
Yeah, and that was pretty frustrating. That, I would say out of everything, that has been my most frustrating things. It's gotten better, but it's not totally where I'd like it to be.
So the bureaucracy of government, it's like what needs to happen, but it doesn't happen when you need it. It happens at their time.
Yes. Yeah, my emergency is certainly not theirs.
Mm. Now, how well funded is Texas compared to others, or Tarrant County in particular? Do you feel there has been a tightening of the rope, or what has been the case?
In our case, with the current county judge Tim O'Hara, he has led the way in this. If we are becoming very well funded. For instance, is that our deputies were number 88th in the Metroplex in pay. Well, over the last 2 years in his tenure, along with Manny Ramirez, they have come up almost 30% in pay. So while we're still near the top, instead of 88th, we might be hovering around 20th. So we've gained ground, and I suspect we'll continue to gain ground in wages and also equipment. We've gotten better equipment. We have armored vehicles now. We've got great lightweight vests. We have gotten tasers. None of these things were there when I came in.
Wow.
So the taser's got a bad rap, and my predecessor would not allow him to carry it. And when I came into work as sheriff, one of the first things I saw was we serve mental health warrants all the time. It's a dangerous job. And the highest workers' comp percentage-wise was in the mental health deputies. And we got tasers donated to us, and we got them trained in it. It made all the difference in the world. And they went after one guy that we'd dealt with several times, and the officer showed up and said, "Joe, you're going to go. We're going to take you. We got a mental health warrant." And he says, "You know me, it's not going to be until after the fight." And one of the deputies deployed his taser and said, "Well, Joe, we're going to tase you." And the bad guy said, "Wait a minute, that's against Tarrant County Sheriff's policy that y'all carry tasers." And they said, "Well, there's a new sheriff in town." And he came along peacefully.
That's a good line. I always talk to my fellow friends who are in law enforcement. If you can use the taser, I will use the taser every single time. I don't want to, use force when there's that tool available,
Absolutely.
So I don't know. Is there? Would you agree with me on that?
I agree 100%. I think that if you can tase somebody and get them to submission without anybody fighting, it's better for the suspect and absolutely better for the officer.
Well, it's interesting though when you watch footages of subjects being tased, they literally stiff up and they fall, and they more often than not they bounce their heads on the wall. Is there any liability in that regard?
No, I don't think so, because if they're in the act of resistance, they're in the act of resistance, and
it's probably less than what would be the case if you have to actually go hands-on.
Right.
Or definitely less risky.
Yes.
For all involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so you got your first term, and then second term came. What was the difference between the first and the second? Did you have more challenges on your campaign? Was that a harder opposition that you had to deal with?
My second term is raising money again was always difficult, and we had one opponent, and we were able to win by 7 or 8 points, and we spent probably $500,000 on that campaign. So we got in our second term, And what I saw near the end of the second term is that we were finally having impact. Culture was changing to a positive. Of course, we went through COVID during that time period too. We were just coming out of COVID, and people, the Black Lives Matter movement, all of those things deterred people from wanting to get in law enforcement. So now we couldn't get anybody to apply, and this was across the board. It wasn't just us; it was across the country, and so COVID really, really hit us hard, and we did lose 7 inmates to COVID. But I also buried 5 officers because of COVID.
Really?
Yes, sir. And that came straight out of the jail.
Wow.
So, I mean, that was a pretty tough time. That was some really dark years.
Yeah.
But here we are on the other side of that doing good. Mm-hmm. Recruitment's starting to go up. People want to come to work there. So we're excited about that. But now I'm in my 3rd term, and things are looking good.
That's great. I'm happy to hear. Let's talk about our dear friend. I when I went to the funeral, you were the one doing the main eulogy. It was very inspiring. I was enjoying every bit of it. And you told me about the impact that he had in your life, and how much of a parallel there is. You also went to Air Force, right? Went to Korea, his brother also served, Aaron. What can you tell about him?
Carlos Norris and that whole Norris bunch.
Mm-hmm.
But Carlos, my experiences with him was, quite frankly, all about, he'd turn it around on you to be all about you. He'd want to know about me. He'd want to know what was going on with me and what was going on in politics and what was going on, in those kind of things. He did that often, but the impact of, here you got the guy that is, one of the top probably 20 names in the world that people know, and he's asking about your family. He's, and I just so appreciated that of him. And, his impact on Roy Curbin translated to the training that I went through, with some of that, with his fighting abilities and his skill level and how to fight. And I always appreciated that, and never mastered it near what Roy Curbin had. But I would say that the family of the Norrises, from his mom to Aaron, and his sweet, sweet mama Wilma, who we lost a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
She was she'd call me and tell me how much she was praying for me, and praying for the kids and those kind of things. But what I found out about Carlos is he was just a humble man,
mm-hmm.
who wanted to serve and wanted to inspire others to serve. And he did it. Again, in that Kickstart program, he has got a tremendous amount of people there that he's inspired to lead. He inspired them to serve these kids at risk. And it's just an amazing ministry, if you will. And one year he and Aaron asked me to come out to UFAF and train people in active shooters. I was happy to do that. But I thought, here I am teaching, Chuck Norris black belts. I'm not qualified to do that. But I went down to Houston and taught them. We've had a lot of interaction on that level. And but I didn't find him he wasn't busy. When I say busy, he wasn't the talker in the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
He asked questions that were great questions.
Mm-hmm.
And he may make a statement or two. And, I've been in his museum down there. He's led me through the museum and talking about, and you saw that, he had a passion. He was always an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a passion for other things in there, and some of the boating races and car races. But what a beautiful life and a wonderful life that he led. Mm-hmm. And what an action guy. And the biggest thing that I would say take away from him is serve and serve boldly, and also remember where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
Where he came from, because he came from very humble beginnings,
Mm-hmm.
and love your family.
Oh yeah.
And those are some of the global 30,000 foot takeaways of Chuck Norris. And
Now he went through all that and his upbringing, talking about his wonderful mom, Miss Wilma. I mean, she was a single mom for the longest time. He had to actually help raise his young ones. Lost his middle brother in Vietnam. You know, I think he was so motivated to support our military. I've seen so many times him doing that, and but I think he was supportive of people. And his wife, his wonderful wife, Miss Gina, she said something that he had a capacity to detect who was genuine or not.
He did indeed.
And when he connected with somebody, he chose to connect with that person.
Just for your information, I was with them, both Aaron and Carlos, and they held you in such high esteem and talked about you as another brother. They believed that, and I believe they believed that, is that you were just another brother, and they loved you. And, you know, not in past tense, but I know Aaron does too, currently. But in what a deal where Chuck Norris humbled himself, came to you for training, and you raised him up in jiu-jitsu, which he was a big fan of. He was a huge fan of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, he was a humble man. Humble man. Now, when you talk about as a student, I only had a couple guys in my entire life that had the skill to learn things. You show them once, they get it right away. And Chuck Norris, I'm not trying to make this up. He would learn right off the bat. I only showed him something once. He was already doing it. You know, incredible skills. You know, Mr. Waybourn, I don't know what else to add other than wish you all the success. But I appreciate all you do for our state, all you do for law enforcement at large, all you do for all the victims or potential victims of such, you know, pervasive and perverted crimes that happen against, you know, those victims of sex trafficking. And for keeping our citizens safe in this beautiful state that we share. God bless you.
Well, thank you, and God bless you. You know, I tell people when I'm able to talk that all over the world, people love the title of American citizen. And however, there's people in 49 other states would love the title of Texan. So I'm really proud of Texas.
Amen. Thank you, sir. It was an honor and a pleasure.
My honor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.